The summer of 1914 dawned bright with promise, a season that seemed to hold the potential for peace and prosperity. Europe, a continent of empires and grand ambitions, basked in the golden glow of Belle Époque, an era marked by cultural flourishing and technological advancements. Beneath the surface, however, a current of unrest stirred, as political tensions and social upheavals simmered, threatening to disrupt the fragile harmony. A web of alliances, born of suspicion and fear, bound the great powers together, creating a delicate balance that could easily be tipped into chaos. Imperial rivalries festered, fueled by competition for colonies and resources, as nations vied for dominance on the global stage. Nationalism, a potent force, surged through the veins of Europe's peoples, igniting dreams of glory and unification, and often blinding them to the dangers of unchecked ambition. On June 28, 1914, a shot rang out in the Bosnian city of Sarajevo, a moment that would alter the course of history. Gavrilo Princip, a young Serbian nationalist, assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, setting off a chain reaction. The assassination sent shockwaves across Europe, setting in motion a chain of events that would plunge the continent into the abyss of war, a conflict unlike any seen before. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, issued an ultimatum to Serbia, demanding satisfaction and retribution for the assassination. Serbia, supported by Russia, refused to comply fully, unwilling to bow to the harsh demands imposed upon them. Within weeks, the fragile peace shattered as diplomatic efforts failed and the machinery of war began to turn. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914, setting the stage for a broader conflict. Russia mobilized its vast army in support of Serbia, a move that alarmed Germany and its allies. Germany, bound by treaty to Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia on August 1st and on France, Russia's ally, on August 3rd, escalating the conflict further. On August 4th, Great Britain, obligated to defend Belgium's neutrality, declared war on Germany, drawing yet another major power into the fray. The Great War, a conflict that would engulf the world, had begun, marking the start of unprecedented destruction and loss. The world watched in disbelief as the lights of Europe flickered and dimmed, casting a shadow over the continent. What began as a localized crisis in the Balkans had escalated into a global conflagration, drawing in nations from across the world. The great powers, armed with industrial might and driven by dreams of conquest, marched their armies into the killing fields unaware of the prolonged agony that awaited. Millions of young men, their heads filled with patriotic fervor, answered the call to arms, unaware of the horrors that awaited them, the trenches, the gas, and the relentless artillery that would define their experience. At the heart of the crisis that engulfed Europe in 1914 lay a complex web of alliances, intricately woven over decades. These alliances, forged in the latter half of the 19th century, were intended to preserve peace through a balance of power, a delicate equilibrium that was supposed to prevent any one nation from becoming too dominant. Instead, they transformed a local conflict into a global war, pulling in countries from across the world into a devastating and prolonged struggle. The great powers of Europe found themselves bound by treaties that obligated them to defend their allies, even if it meant going to war against nations with whom they had no direct quarrel. This created a domino effect, where the actions of one nation could trigger a chain reaction across the continent. The alliance system that emerged in the late 19th century was largely the work of Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Prussia. Bismarck's diplomatic genius lay in his ability to foresee and manipulate the political landscape of Europe. Bismarck, a master of realpolitik, sought to secure Germany's newly won position of power in Europe by creating a system of alliances that would isolate France, Germany's traditional enemy. His goal was to prevent France from seeking revenge for its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. In 1879, Germany and Austria-Hungary signed the Dual Alliance, a defensive pact aimed at containing Russian expansion in the Balkans. This alliance was a cornerstone of Bismarck's strategy to maintain stability in Europe. 3 years later, Italy joined the alliance, forming the Triple Alliance. This expanded the network of mutual defense and further solidified the bloc against potential threats. France, isolated by Bismarck's diplomacy, sought allies of its own. The French government was determined to break out of its diplomatic isolation and find partners who could help counterbalance the power of the Triple Alliance. In 1894, France and Russia signed the Franco-Russian Alliance, a counterweight to the Triple Alliance. This alliance was crucial for France. as it provided a powerful ally in the East. Great Britain, traditionally wary of continental entanglements, remained aloof from permanent alliances. The British policy of splendid isolation aimed to keep the nation free from binding commitments. However, growing concerns about German naval expansion and the possibility of a German-dominated Europe led Britain to sign the Entente Cordiale with France in 1904. This marked a significant shift in British foreign policy. The Entente Cordiale was not a formal military alliance, but it resolved outstanding colonial disputes and paved the way for closer Anglo-French cooperation. It was a step towards a more united front against potential threats. In 1907, Britain and Russia settled their own long-standing rivalries in Asia, signing the Anglo-Russian Entente. This agreement further strengthened the network of alliances opposing the Triple Alliance. The Anglo-Russian Entente combined with the Entente Cordiale created the Triple Entente, an informal alliance that stood in opposition to the Triple Alliance. This division of Europe into two rival blocs set the stage for a catastrophic conflict. The stage was set for a European war in which a conflict between any two powers could draw in their allies, transforming a local crisis into a general war. The intricate web of alliances, meant to preserve peace, instead became a recipe for disaster. The decades leading up to World War I witnessed an intense rivalry among the European powers for colonies and global influence. Imperialism, driven by economic ambition, national prestige, and a belief in European superiority, fueled tensions and created new flashpoints for conflict. The scramble for colonies, particularly in Africa and Asia, exacerbated existing rivalries and created new ones. Germany, a latecomer to the race for colonies, felt increasingly frustrated by its limited overseas possessions. German leaders, eager to secure their place in the sun, pursued an aggressive foreign policy aimed at expanding German influence and challenging the established colonial powers. Germany's ambitions brought it into conflict with Britain, France, and Russia, all of which had extensive colonial empires. The rivalry for colonies extended beyond the acquisition of territory. The great powers also competed for economic dominance, seeking to secure access to raw materials, markets for their manufactured goods, and strategic waterways. The race for colonies fueled a naval arms race, as each power sought to build a fleet capable of protecting its overseas interests and projecting power around the globe. The competition for colonies and global influence created an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust among the European powers, making war more likely. Section 4. Militarism, an arms race to ruin. Militarism, the glorification of military power and the belief that war is a necessary and even desirable instrument of national policy, played a significant role in the outbreak of World War I. This ideology was deeply ingrained in the political and social fabric of the time, influencing leaders and citizens alike. In the decades leading up to the war, the great powers of Europe engaged in a costly and destabilizing arms race, driven by fear, suspicion, and a desire for national aggrandizement. This competition for military superiority created an environment where diplomatic solutions were often overshadowed by the threat of force. Military spending soared, and armies swelled in size, creating a climate of tension and insecurity. Nations poured vast resources into their military establishments, believing that a strong military was essential for national survival and prestige. Germany, under the leadership of Kaiser Wilhelm II, embarked on a program of rapid naval expansion, challenging Britain's long-standing dominance at sea. This naval arms race was a clear indication of Germany's ambitions and its desire to assert itself as a global power. The German naval buildup, spearheaded by Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, was motivated by a desire to secure Germany's growing economic interests and to enhance its international prestige. The construction of a powerful navy was seen as a symbol of national strength and a deterrent against potential adversaries. Britain, alarmed by the German challenge, responded by expanding its own navy and developing new warships, such as the HMS Dreadnought, which revolutionized naval warfare. The Dreadnought's advanced design rendered previous battleships obsolete, further intensifying the naval arms race. The arms race was not limited to naval forces. The great powers also expanded their armies, introducing new technologies and tactics that made war more deadly. Innovations such as machine guns, artillery, and chemical weapons increased the destructive potential of military engagements. The great powers also expanded their armies, introducing new technologies and tactics that made war more deadly. These advancements in military technology meant that any future conflict would be far more devastating than previous wars. Conscription, the compulsory enlistment of citizens for military service, became widespread, creating vast reserve armies that could be mobilized quickly in the event of war. This mass mobilization capability meant that nations could rapidly escalate conflicts, turning local disputes into full-scale wars. The arms race heightened tensions and created a climate of fear and suspicion, making war more likely. Diplomatic efforts to resolve conflicts were often undermined by the pervasive belief that military strength was the ultimate guarantor of national security. Section 5. Nationalism, the spark that ignited the powder keg. Nationalism, a potent force in the 19th and early 20th centuries, played a significant role in the outbreak of World War I. Nationalism, in its most extreme form, is the belief that one's own nation is superior to all others, and that it should be united and independent. In the years leading up to the war, nationalism fueled tensions in the Balkans, a region riven by ethnic and religious divisions, and coveted by the great powers. The Ottoman Empire, once a mighty power, was in terminal decline. As the Ottoman Empire weakened, nationalist movements emerged in the Balkans, seeking independence or autonomy. Serbia, a Slavic nation with a strong sense of national identity, aspired to unite all South Slavs under its rule. Austria-Hungary, a multi-ethnic empire with a large Slavic population, viewed Serbian nationalism as a threat to its territorial integrity. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand by a Serbian nationalist was a direct consequence of the rising tide of nationalism in the Balkans. The assassination outraged Austria-Hungary and provided it with a pretext for taking action against Serbia. Nationalism, once a force for unification and liberation, had become a catalyst for war.